Picture this, Christmas Day 2025. While you're opening presents at home, something really strange is happening in the East China Sea. A data analyst is staring at his computer screen watching ship movements. He suddenly sees something that makes him freeze completely. 2,000 fishing boats appear on his screen, not scattered around doing normal fishing work. They're lined up in perfect military formation. The formation stretches an incredible 290 miles across the ocean. That's the distance from New York City all the way to Buffalo. Each single dot on his screen is one fishing boat. Together, they're forming a massive inverted L shape across the sea. This analyst has tracked Chinese boats many times before. He's seen hundreds, maybe more, but never anything like this at all. He thinks to himself, something is not right here. He's about to discover he's witnessing something completely unprecedented in maritime history. Here's the thing you need to understand right away. These aren't just random fishing boats doing their normal thing on Christmas Day. The tracking data shows they're all holding position steadily. Staying put. Not moving in any typical fishing patterns at all right now. Normal fishing boats usually loop around constantly or go back and forth searching. These boats? They're just sitting there frozen like soldiers. Can you even imagine 2,000 boats all staying put like they're waiting for orders? That's exactly what this looks like. Now, this analyst isn't the only one noticing this strange pattern. The New York Times gets the data and starts their own analysis. Starboard Maritime Intelligence confirms it too independently. They're like the professional detectives of the ocean. They see the exact same massive formation. Mark Douglas from Starboard says something really chilling. We have never seen a formation this size and discipline before in our entire careers. Think about that statement for just a second. These are professional analysts who track ships for a living every single day. Never seen it. Each line in the tracking data shows one ship's path over 30 full hours. See how they barely move at all during that time? Normal fishing boats are supposed to move around constantly searching for fish in different areas. These boats aren't fishing. They're clearly waiting for something. Some cargo ships approaching the area had to zigzag through the boats or go completely around them just to pass through safely. Imagine you're a cargo captain carrying goods from Shanghai, one of the world's busiest ports, to somewhere in the Pacific Ocean region. Suddenly your radar lights up with contacts everywhere. 2,000 boats directly ahead of you blocking your normal shipping route. What would you do? You'd probably think twice about going straight through, right? You'd slow down immediately, maybe change course completely. That's exactly the point here. Okay, so Christmas Day was weird enough on its own, but then here's where it gets really crazy. Just a few weeks later, January 11th, 2026. Analysts are checking their screens again doing their normal daily analysis routine, and it's happening again. Same exact thing. This time about 1,400 boats total. They're forming a perfect rectangle stretching over 200 miles across the entire East China Sea. Two massive operations in total. Only weeks apart from each other in time, in the exact same waters. This cannot possibly be a coincidence. Look at these two formations side by side on the map. Christmas, inverted L shape. January, perfect rectangle. Different shapes, same military precision. Same eerie coordination between vessels. Same disciplined positioning without deviation. Someone is clearly practicing something serious, testing their ability to mobilize at massive scale. Gregory Poling from the Center for Strategic and International Studies says directly, they are almost certainly not fishing at all right now. He continues his analysis. I cannot think of any explanation that isn't state-directed by government. State-directed means the government is giving the orders directly. Now you're probably wondering at this point, why would China do this with fishing boats? What's the real purpose? Let me explain something important. Let me introduce you to something most people outside of military circles have never even heard of before. The Chinese Maritime Militia. Here's what's brilliant and terrifying about China's strategy at the same time. These are fishing boats. They're civilian vessels legally under international law. Under international law, you cannot just attack civilian vessels during wartime or conflict. They are protected by law. They are completely off limits. But what if those civilian boats are actually being directed by the military from behind the scenes, acting as a maritime barricade to block enemy warships? That's the Maritime Militia in action. They're fishermen by day, fighters by night. Or really, fighters whenever Beijing decides to call them up. Andrew Erickson, a professor at the Naval War College, has studied this phenomenon for years. He calls it gray zone warfare in modern conflicts. Gray zone means it's not quite war, not quite peace either at all. It's that murky, uncomfortable area right in between the two extremes. China has done this before in other areas. They've sent hundreds of boats to swarm disputed reefs in the South China Sea previously. They park there for weeks, sometimes even months at a time. Not fighting, not shooting, just existing there. Claiming space by their physical presence alone. But this is different from those previous operations. This is practicing formations at massive scale. This is testing their advanced command and control systems. Analysts from Ingenious Space say it clearly shows their improved ability to command and control thousands of civilian ships at once simultaneously. Translation into simple terms? They're getting better at turning ordinary fishermen into a massive naval asset, a weapon you legally cannot shoot at directly. Think about it from a military perspective for a moment. If you're the US Navy and fishing boats are blocking your path completely, do you open fire on them? On civilians? That's a public relations nightmare globally. That could be considered a war crime under international law. So you slow down your advance, you wait, you try to navigate around them carefully without incident. And that delay, that's exactly the strategic point. Now let's talk about the location of all this. Where did this happen exactly? The East China Sea. Why there specifically? Let me show you. See that island right there on the map? That's Taiwan. And those major shipping lanes? They run right past Taiwan, carrying all global trade. The January exercise happened right after China held large military drills around Taiwan. They were practicing a complete naval blockade scenario against the island. Polling thinks it's simpler than that, actually. China was just testing. Can we get thousands of fishermen to show up quickly on command? Perhaps in support of a quarantine, blockade, or other forms of pressure tactics against Taiwan in the future. Think carefully about that phrase right now. A blockade doesn't have to be gray warships with missiles at all. It can be thousands of fishing boats creating a massive human wall. The Center for Strategic Studies has actually war-gamed this exact scenario before using computer simulations and expert military analysts from around the world. In their simulations, China uses civilian ships like fishing boats, ferries, cargo vessels to slowly choke Taiwan economically over time without direct military action. Not with bombs or missiles at all, with sheer numbers alone. With mass, blocking ports, clogging sea lanes, stopping all trade completely. Here's the nightmare scenario for Taiwan's population. Taiwan imports almost everything it needs to function. Energy, food, raw materials, manufacturing components, everything. According to the detailed CSIS study results, Taiwan's natural gas supply runs out in just 10 days without any imports coming in. Oil reserves last 20 weeks approximately. Coal a bit longer than that. But eventually everything runs out completely if ships cannot get through at all. Imagine living in a major city and knowing for certain the lights will go out in 10 days exactly. What would you personally do? That's the kind of pressure China could apply without firing a single shot at all. Not invasion, not bombardment, just patient waiting and economic pressure. And if the United States tries to break through with military convoys to help, well, now you've got thousands of boats in the way blocking. You would have to navigate carefully around them or push through them physically with force. Either way, you face delay after delay after delay. A former U.S. naval officer puts it bluntly and directly. The boats act as perfect missile and torpedo decoys in any military engagement scenario. They overwhelm radars and drone sensors with too many targets at once. Your weapon systems cannot distinguish fishing boats from actual warships clearly. Now here's where everything gets legally messy and complicated for everyone involved. Remember, these are fishing boats. They're legally considered civilians under law. International humanitarian law clearly states you cannot attack civilians unless they are directly participating in hostilities against you in an armed manner. The International Red Cross has an entire 200-page manual defining exactly what direct participation means legally in warfare and armed conflicts. So the critical question becomes this: when does a fishing boat cross the line and become a legitimate military target under international law? Is it when they're forming a blockade formation? When they're following military orders? When they're impeding warships? Nobody knows for absolutely sure right now. Here's the fundamental problem with all of this situation. There is no clear, universally agreed upon answer anywhere. It's all gray and ambiguous. That's precisely why military strategists call it gray zone warfare in modern conflicts. It exploits legal and moral ambiguity very deliberately and strategically. And China knows this legal ambiguity very well from experience. They are exploiting the gap between war and peace brilliantly and strategically right now. The San Remo Manual, which is the International Naval Warfare Rulebook, says blockades must be formally declared and properly notified to all parties officially. But what if you never officially call it a blockade at all? What if you simply say these are just fishermen doing their jobs? See the legal brilliance here in this strategy? China can always claim, what blockade? These are just fishermen exercising their legal fishing rights peacefully. Meanwhile, actual merchant ships cannot get through the formation. Taiwan's economy starts slowly choking and dying. But technically, no war has officially started at all yet. Now, here's another crucial legal twist in this situation. The East China Sea is not Chinese territorial waters at all. Legally speaking, under international law, under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, these are international waters completely. Freedom of navigation legally applies here for all nations. All ships have the internationally recognized right to sail through freely without interference. China cannot legally stop them under international maritime law at all. But what if Chinese fishing boats just happen to be there fishing legitimately, in absolutely huge numbers, in perfect military-style formations? They are not technically stopping anyone directly with force. They are just fishing normally, very densely packed together, in organized patterns. Can you see the legal problem? Article 8 of International State Responsibility Law says, conduct is attributable to a state if it's directed or controlled by government authorities officially. So if you can prove China is directing these boats centrally, you can hold Beijing legally accountable under international law in international courts. But proving that in real time during a crisis situation, while Taiwan is running out of gas and electricity? Good luck with that legal process. And by the time you gather enough evidence and prove it legally in international courts officially, the economic and political pressure has already worked perfectly. Let's zoom out now and look at the bigger strategic picture here. Overall, why is China practicing this specific capability right now at this time? Admiral Sam Paparo, the U.S. Indo-Pacific commander, said something very stark recently to the press. Beijing's maneuvers are dress rehearsals for forced unification of Taiwan. He noted specifically in his statement, the PLA escalated military pressure against Taiwan by 300% in 2024 alone compared to previous years. 300% increase in just 1 year. That is not a typo or exaggeration at all. 3 times the previous level of military pressure, and these fishing boat exercises we're discussing? They are clearly part of a much broader pattern of military rehearsals and preparations for potential conflict. Here's the cold military logic behind everything we're seeing. If China acts against Taiwan militarily, the US and Japan will respond with military force. China knows it cannot completely stop the US military from eventually arriving in the region, but it can significantly delay them getting there in time. This is called anti-access area denial strategy in military terms. Make it extremely hard and time-consuming for enemies to get in the theater of operations. Missiles, submarines, naval mines create the conventional military layer of defense. But fishing boats? That's the civilian layer working alongside military forces simultaneously. Imagine you were planning to sail an aircraft carrier strike group to defend Taiwan against Chinese military aggression in a crisis scenario. You expect and plan for Chinese missiles and submarines, obviously, but thousands of fishing boats directly in your path across the ocean? Every single hour you spend carefully navigating around them safely is another hour Taiwan does not get desperately needed resupply of critical materials and energy. Lonnie Henley, a former U.S. intelligence officer, says China does not see civilian ships as just a temporary stopgap measure at all in their planning. It is a central feature of their preferred strategic approach to any Taiwan conflict. This is not backup or secondary. This is the actual primary strategy. And here's perhaps the scariest part of all this entire situation. It is not expensive at all for China to do this repeatedly whenever they want. You do not need billion-dollar advanced warships at all. You just need massive numbers of boats you already have, and control through fishing fleets. So what does all this mean for us in the real world? For the world overall? These exercises happened just weeks ago in December and January. Right now, as you're watching this video, those same boats are back in their home ports, waiting quietly, ready to move again. China has clearly shown it can mobilize thousands of civilian vessels in perfect formation within hours whenever needed. That's not a drill anymore at all. That's a real capability now. That's a weapon in their arsenal. And unlike missiles or warships, the world barely noticed when it was tested recently. Think about the implications of this for future conflicts. War doesn't always start with explosions and fire. Sometimes it starts with fishing boats forming a line. Sometimes it starts with cargo ships having to take a longer route slowly. With insurance rates quietly going up without anyone really noticing initially. Sometimes pressure builds so slowly, so quietly over time, that by the time you realize what's happening around you, it's already too late to respond. Taiwan sits just across that sea from China. 23 million people living on an island that imports almost everything it needs to survive daily. And now we know China has practiced surrounding that island with civilian boats successfully. Twice already. In perfect coordination, both times without major issues. The question isn't whether they can do it anymore. We've seen they clearly can. The question is much simpler. Will they actually do it? And if they do decide to act, how will the world respond in real time? Do you fire on fishing boats? Do you watch Taiwan suffocate slowly? These aren't hypothetical questions anymore at all. These are questions that military planners are literally losing sleep over right now tonight as we speak. Remember those 2,000 boats on Christmas Day clearly? They've all returned home now, but the world has changed fundamentally since then forever. Because now we know what's possible in modern warfare. Now we know that the next conflict might not look like traditional war at all initially, until it's too late to prevent, until the fishing boats have done what missiles couldn't achieve, until delay itself becomes complete defeat for defenders. So the next time you hear about tensions in the Taiwan Strait region, remember this story clearly. Remember the fishing boats that practiced blockade formations. Because sometimes the most dangerous weapons don't explode at all. They just wait patiently, in perfect formation. 2,000 strong and coordinated. Today's story ends here for now. But the real story? That one's still being written every single day. Out there in the East China Sea,